This is Armity Mobin, Socratic World War II makeup. I chose the left-hand corner box on the top, and the subject I will be discussing today is how did U.S. foreign policy in the 1930s impact World War II? The United States pursued isolation policies beginning after World War I. It started with the Ford-Niemeyer tariff, which was a tariff that was placed on foreign goods, and it made them really expensive. And it worked well, and it helped to create the quote-unquote boom of the 1920s. However, other foreign governments were not too happy with this, and they put taxes on American goods. In that way, we kind of isolated ourselves economically. And after World War I, the U.S. had this kind of fear of foreign people. It's called xenophobia. It was due to the war, but mainly it was the fear that foreign people would take American jobs because they accepted lower wages. People weren't very happy with all of the deaths, the American deaths that had resulted in World War I. We had the whole Great Depression thing to go through, so we couldn't talk to other nations because we had no money to trade. And it was just safer for US citizens as a whole if we didn't get involved in any more European affairs because we didn't actually get anything from World War I. Okay, how did isolationism play a role in Japan's invasion of China? It played a huge role because we were not talking to China at that point. So when we did that, we could not give them resources and help them defend themselves against Japan. So our isolationism thing actually made some countries lose out. And same thing happened with the Spanish Civil War. When we did not recognize them, they fell. How did FDR support Allied countries as World War II began in Europe? So, because the United States had a neutral stance when World War II broke out in September 1939, they needed a way to help aid Great Britain while remaining free of conflict. So, the initial constraints to the Neutrality Acts limited them to arms sales, like the cash and carry purchases. The cash and carry purchases were when Great Britain came to the US, but they had to pay for all of the military supplies with cash, and they were responsible for taking them out of the US themselves. FDR also started the Destroyers for Bases agreement, which helped aid a lot as well. So the Destroyers for Basers agreement was when Prime Minister Winston Churchill got into an agreement with FDR, and the agreement of the Destroyers for Bases was that 50 surplus American destroyers were transferred to the Royal Navy of Britain and Royal Canadian Navy in exchange for rent-free 99-year leases on various military installations. The biggest aid that FDR gave to Great Britain was the Lend-Lease Act of 1941, in which this act empowered the president to quote-unquote sell, transfer title to, exchange, lease, lend, or otherwise dispose of any such government whose defensive the president deems to be vital to the defense of the United States. So this was kind of like a loophole for America to use to give aid to Britain under the condition that Britain was vital to the US's safety as a nation. The Lend-Lease Act helped British, they were permitted to make repairs on American ports and training facilities for British repairmen when they were constructing in the US. And in order to ease Britain's shortage of war materials, Roosevelt pushed for the creation of the Lend-Lease program. What were the reasons for U.S. attitudes towards involvement in Europe and Asia as World War II began? So when World War II officially began, America was still in its little isolationist policy. So we just said, sorry, we're not going to get involved. We had the whole neutral stance thing. After World War I, we really didn't gain anything. So our mindset going into World War II was we have nothing to gain, we have nothing to lose, we're just going to stay out of it. We did favor Europe against Japan, but at the same time we did not act on it until FDR started implementing his policies. So I discussed the Lend-Lease Act a little bit in the previous slide, but to provide some more information on it, it was a agreement between Winston Churchill and FDR, and when the American public first heard of it, they were not very happy with it because we were still kind of in our isolationist phase. However, Roosevelt compared it to loaning a hose to a neighbor whose house was on fire, because if we because he compared it to saying, like, if we were in such a situation when your neighbor says, can you please lend me your hose, my house is on fire, you don't say, neighbor, my garden hose has cost me $15, you have to pay me $15 for it. What you do is you say, I don't want $15, I want my garden hose back after the fire was over. In April, FDR expanded the Lend-Lease program by offering aid to China in their war against the Japanese. By the end of the program, the British received over $1 billion in aid through October 1941. What was the destroyers for bases? This was a part of Roosevelt's agreements with the UK in order to keep our neutral stance but still give aid. So Roosevelt's compromise for helping Britain, as he could not sell Britain US destroyers without defying the Neutrality Act. So Britain received 50 old but still serviceable US destroyers in exchange for giving the US the right to build military bases on the British islands in the Caribbean. These leases have 99 years, so I believe we still have these. So the arsenal of democracy was something that President Roosevelt once referred to during his fireside chats. The fireside chats were just like this little fun thing. It wasn't really like a fun thing, but it was something he did for the country, which was when the radio first came out, it was used as a tool. So him using his tool, he did the fireside chats to kind of help calm down Americans in the midst of all the chaos and war, and it made him seem like approachable and personable. So the arsenal of democracy was FDR referring to the U.S. factories because they had to produce war goods for the government, and it kind of just encouraged really rapid production. So it was just the U.S. helping out other countries for the good old-fashioned democracy.
Sounds great.
And that's the end of my World War II presentation. Thank you for listening.